The house loomed large, casting a long shadow over Ethan. Its paint was peeling, and the windows were like vacant eyes. Ethan shivered, clutching his backpack tighter. This summer was going to be awful. Aunt Sarah had asked him to stay while she went traveling. He had no choice but to agree. His parents were already in Europe, and he was stuck with the creepy old house on Harbinger Lane. Ethan dragged his suitcase up the creaking porch steps. The floorboards groaned under his weight as he stepped inside. Dust motes danced in the faint light filtering through dusty windows. The air felt heavy, thick with the smell of mildew and something else, something undefinable but unsettling. Ethan swallowed hard. He was utterly alone. Days turned into a monotonous cycle of boredom and unease. Ethan spent most of his time reading or exploring the sprawling house. One sweltering afternoon, he stumbled upon a hidden door in the hallway upstairs. It was concealed behind a dusty old tapestry, its edges frayed. Curiosity piqued. Ethan pulled it aside, revealing a rickety wooden door. A shiver ran down his spine as he creaked it open. Musty air wafted down from the attic. Cobwebs hung like macabre decorations. Ethan cautiously climbed the creaky steps, his hand trailing along the rough-hewn wall. There, amidst forgotten furniture and piles of moth-eaten clothes, he found a wooden chest tucked under a dusty window. Inside, nestled among yellowed photographs and old trinkets, lay a faded letter. The letter, dated decades ago, was penned in elegant cursive. It spoke of strange occurrences, of unsettling dreams, and a presence that haunted the house on Harbinger Lane. Ethan's blood ran cold as he read the final chilling line. "It watches from the shadows, whispering my name." That night, sleep evaded Ethan. He lay in bed, listening to the old house creak and groan. The wind howled outside his window, rattling the glass panes. Just as he was about to drift off, he heard it, a faint whisper, barely audible above the wind. It seemed to snake its way through the cracks in his door, slithering into his room like a living thing. Ethan sat bolt upright in bed, his heart pounding in his chest. His name, someone or something had whispered his name. The phone rang the next morning, shattering the tense silence that had settled over the house. Ethan jumped, startled by the sudden noise. He grabbed the receiver, his hand trembling slightly. "Hello?" he said, his voice raspy. Silence. Then a series of clicks and pops, followed by a voice, distorted and distant, whispering his name. Ethan slammed the phone down, his heart racing. He stared at it, as if it were a venomous snake ready to strike. The old rotary phone seemed to pulsate with an eerie energy. He couldn't shake off the feeling that something was deeply, terribly wrong. Sleep became a distant memory. Each night, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. They seemed to come from the attic, beckoning him. Shadows danced at the edges of his vision. Footsteps echoed in the hallway outside his room, always stopping just beyond his door. Ethan's paranoia grew with each passing day. He felt like a prisoner in the house, trapped with something unseen and malevolent. The letter he'd found in the attic weighed heavily on his mind. Was he experiencing the same terror that had plagued the house all those years ago? Was he in danger? Fear gnawed at him, a constant companion. Driven by a mixture of fear and morbid curiosity, Ethan decided to confront his terror. He had to know what was happening. Armed with a flashlight and a growing sense of dread, he crept up the stairs to the attic. The air was thick with dust and the scent of decay. Ethan shone his flashlight into the darkness, his heart pounding in his ears. Cobwebs hung from every nook and cranny, and the shadows seemed to twist and writhe in the beam of his light. He made his way to the old chest where he'd found the letter. As he reached out to open it, a cold gust of wind slammed the attic door shut with a deafening boom. Ethan whirled around, his flashlight beam dancing wildly in the darkness, catching glimpses of shapes that vanished as quickly as they appeared. Panic surged through him. He fumbled with the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. He was trapped. The whispers started again, this time closer, surrounding him, mocking his fear. He felt a cold breath on the back of his neck. Ethan spun around, his flashlight beam catching a fleeting glimpse of a figure standing in the shadows. It was gone as quickly as it appeared, but the image of its face, pale and gaunt, was burned into his memory. He stumbled back, knocking over an old tarnished mirror that had been leaning against the wall. As he looked down at the shattered glass, he saw it again, the face, This time it was his own, but it was distorted, twisted into an expression of pure terror. The whispers intensified, swirling around him like a vortex of fear. Ethan felt a presence closing in, cold and menacing. He backed away until he was pressed against the wall, his eyes darting frantically around the darkened attic. Then he saw it. A message scrawled in the thick layer of dust that coated the floor. "Get out." The message was crudely written, as if by an unseen hand. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. Someone, or something, was trying to warn him. But why? And what did it all mean? That night, Ethan lay awake, listening to the house groan and sigh. The whispers continued, but now they were accompanied by another sound, a slow, rhythmic thumping, like footsteps climbing the stairs. He knew whatever haunted the house was coming for him. Fear threatened to consume him, but a strange sense of resolve took hold. He wouldn't just lie there and wait. He grabbed his flashlight and crept out of his room. The hallway was dark, the only light coming from the faint glow of the moon filtering through the window at the end. Ethan followed the sound of the thumping, his heart pounding in his chest. Each step he took seemed to echo in the eerie silence. The air grew colder, the smell of mildew stronger as he neared the attic. As he reached the attic door, the thumping stopped. Ethan hesitated, his hand hovering over the doorknob. He could turn back, pretend he hadn't heard anything. Taking a deep breath, Ethan pushed the door open and stepped inside. The attic was shrouded in darkness, the only sound the beating of his own heart. He fumbled for his flashlight, his fingers trembling. Suddenly, a cold hand clamped down on his shoulder. Ethan spun around, his flashlight beam illuminating nothing. Yet he could still feel the icy grip on his shoulder, the pressure increasing, threatening to crush his bones. He screamed, a primal sound of terror, and scrambled back, tripping over his own feet. He scrambled to his feet and fled, the chilling touch lingering on his skin. Ethan didn't stop running until he was miles away from Harbinger Lane. He never looked back, his mind replaying the terror of that night in a never-ending loop. He never returned to the old house, not even to collect his belongings. The memory of the cold hand, the whispers, the face in the mirror haunted his dreams. He knew, deep down, that the haunting wasn't over. He had escaped the house on Harbinger Lane, but something told him whatever resided within its walls was far from finished. The question that chilled him to the bone was, would it come looking for him?